I am Nathan Strom, and this is my lecture on appropriate and exact language. What is appropriate language? Appropriate language is the form in which people of a certain dialect should communicate to avoid offending and confusing the audience. For instance, people in the United States should use the standard American English dialect. This is especially important in writing academic or business papers. Non-standard dialect. Non-standard dialect are certain dialects that could be Black English, Coastal Maine, or Creole, and when writing an academic or business paper, you should use the standard English dialect. Some examples of non-standard dialect could be when somebody says them books or their selves. Next is online communication. Online communication should be avoided when writing academic papers, because they include sentence fragments, missing punctuation, or missing capital letters. Non-standard abbreviations or spellings are like BRB, which means be right back, or LOL, which is laughing out loud, etc., etc. This can be used in texting a lot, and you could see these in your papers. Be aware of that when you're writing academic papers. Next is slang. Slang is language used by unique groups to reflect common experiences. They can come in expressions and be very forceful. An example would be calling an emotional person emo. Next is colloquial language. This is also known as the everyday spoken language around the world or in various regions. It is also referred to as informal language, and that is, it is more acceptable than slang or swear words. Its history is from the Latin word conversation. Using like as a conjunction is an example of common conversation language. It is also used for informal or relaxed writing, not for academic or business writing. Technical words. These are various words specialized for different disciplines and professions. Avoid technical words if communicating to non-specialists. So if you're a computer programmer, you may not want to use technical words to a doctor. Example would be allophones is the several varieties of sound feature which make up a phoneme. This is used in linguistics. Indirect and pretentious writing. Indirect writing includes euphemism and double talk. A euphemism would be an expression used to substitute potentially offensive words. An example would be saying somebody has passed away rather than died. And double talk is intending to confuse the reader. So if you said something about enhancing revenue, it's basically saying a tax. And pretentious writing is fancy language that goes into too much detail than required. If you're doing an academic writing, do not go into more detail than needed. It will be much appreciated by your reader. Sexist and biased language. Sexist language involves using narrow ideas about men and women in different areas. It is very much like a stereotype. For instance, men can't cook. That would be an example of sexist language. Biased language involves stereotypes or poor generalizations with little evidence. This should be avoided in all academic writing. Now appropriate labels. Avoid labels that may offend the person or group you may be referring to. Use proper names for racial, ethnic, or other groups that connect to their preferences. Use identification of a group only when it is relevant to the argument created in your paper. Now exact language. Exact language uses words or phrases that are relevant and effective towards an audience. It is also known as the process of finding correct words that fit your meaning and attitude. Now is words, meanings, and synonyms. It is important to know what definitions are being referred to when using certain words in your paper. If it is necessary, use a thesaurus or dictionary. Now here's an example of a dictionary entry if you need to use one. As you can see, in the top part, you have denotes syllable breaks in the word. Then next is the pronunciation of the word, which is extremely important. And then the part of speech, whether it's a noun, verb, or adjective. And it is also important to know the word's history. Now the right word for your meaning. There are two different types of meanings for each word. There's the denotation and the connotation. The denotation are the basic meanings of a word. Those are generally the definitions listed in the dictionary, so you can use the letter D for dictionary. And connotation are the secondary meanings of words, or the emotional association meaning of the word. For example, brat. Brat in the dictionary means a child, but in our day and age, a brat is used to describe an annoying child, so it's a connotation. Concrete and specific words. Some concrete words could be abstract words or names an idea, like culture or liberal. There are many different definitions for both culture and liberal, so it's important to know which definition you're going to use. And concrete words use all five senses to name qualities. General words are simple grouping words. For instance, buildings, automobiles, just very, very general. Then specific words narrow down the general words, like a rocking chair. Instead of just saying a chair, you can say a rocking chair to be more specific. Now idioms. Idioms are expressions in any language that are not correct in meaning or grammar. Idioms can have prepositions in them. An example would be saying at the top of the hour or whale the tar out of whatever. But these should be avoided in academic writing. Proper use of prepositions. This can be very important when dealing with academic or business writings. Common prepositions are at, in, or on, and also for or since. For time, use at before clock time. Use in before month, year, or different time periods, and use on before a day or date. For places, you should use at before a specific address or place, use in before a place with limits or before a city, state, etc. Use on to imply that it is supported by or touching the surface of. When using the prepositions for or since for expressions of time, use for before a time period, use since before a point in time. Now figurative language. It is also known as a figure of speech. Figurative language uses literal meanings of words, most commonly by comparing very different objects or ideas. Figurative language also uses similes or comparisons using like or as, which many of us are familiar with. Metaphors are also figures of speech, claiming that two unlike things to be identical. These are also very common in colloquial language. Next is trite expressions. Trite expressions are also known as cliches, or phrases that are overused. Common expressions are better late than never, or hard as a rock, or strong as an ox.